My father tapped his crystal wine glass with a silver spoon, waiting for the 60 relatives in the rented banquet hall to quiet down. He smiled his heavy, practiced smile at my older brother Julian, then turned his gaze to me. "To Julian," my father announced, his voice echoing off the high ceilings, "for securing his future with a massive corporate buyout. And to Alara for her brave, if entirely foolish, little attempt at software design. We're just glad Julian is kind enough to absorb his sister's failure into his own success." He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. My mother clapped. My brother smirked, and the room offered a polite, pitying ripple of laughter. I didn't cry. I didn't push my chair back. I just picked up my phone, synced it to the hall's Bluetooth audio system, and prepared to press play on a voicemail from a billionaire investor. The 60 people who had just laughed at me were about to watch my brother lose $10 million, and they were about to watch my parents lose absolutely everything else. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where ordinary women face impossible family betrayals and learn that the quietest person in the room is usually the one holding all the receipts. If you have ever been the daughter expected to understand the absolute wreckage of that dining room, you have to understand the specific arithmetic of the Sterling family. I am the youngest by 3 years. In my house, being the youngest meant I was the infrastructure. I was the reliable one, the one who fixed the Wi-Fi, untangled the bank statements, and quietly built a career as a data systems architect while expecting zero applause. Julian was the chandelier. He was loud, charismatic, and entirely allergic to hard work. By the time he was 32, Julian had launched and abandoned 4 different startups: an app for dog walkers, a boutique marketing firm, a crypto consulting group. Each venture required thousands of dollars in seed money. Each venture quietly folded within 14 months. And every single time, my parents, Arthur and Diane, bailed him out without a whisper of criticism. "Julian has a visionary mind," my mother would say, pressing her lips together at Sunday dinner. "The market just hasn't caught up to him yet." 2 years ago, I started my own company. I didn't ask for a loan. I built a predictive logistics algorithm in the corner of my living room, working from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. every night after my day job. I called the software Nexus. It was lean, it was brilliant, and it worked. By my second year, I had 3 mid-sized shipping companies beta testing my code. I was exhausted, but I was proud. Then Julian's latest venture went bankrupt, leaving him with a leased Porsche he couldn't afford and a bruised ego. He needed a lifeline. He needed a product to pitch to a massive venture capital firm called Vanguard Holdings. And my parents decided my life's work was the most convenient product available. I found out on a rainy Tuesday in October. I had left a backup hard drive in my childhood bedroom during a weekend visit. When I realized it was missing, I checked my remote server access logs. Someone had downloaded the entire Nexus source code repository. The IP address traced directly back to my parents' house. I didn't scream. I didn't call the police immediately. I stood in the quiet of that study, listening to the grandfather clock tick in the hallway. My own parents had watched my brother steal 2 years of my sleepless nights, and they had notarized the theft. I pulled out my phone, photographed every page of the document, set it back exactly where I found it, and walked out the front door. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever discovered that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the ones robbing you in the dark, you know exactly what that cold, hollow feeling in your chest feels like. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had a family member forge your name. I read every single one. And if you're rooting for me, hit that like button, because the revenge I planned was entirely legal and entirely devastating. Over the next 4 weeks, my mother began laying the groundwork for their narrative. She called every aunt, uncle, and cousin in the family tree. I heard it secondhand from my cousin Margot. My mother was telling everyone that my little software business was failing, that I was severely depressed and drowning in debt, and that Julian, the generous older brother, was stepping in to acquire my broken company to save me from bankruptcy. They were building the story. They wanted the extended family to view Julian as my savior, so that when he suddenly sold my algorithm for millions, nobody would question why my name wasn't on the check. They thought I was too tired, too quiet, and too broke to fight them. What Julian didn't know was that Vanguard Holdings, the venture capital firm he was pitching, didn't just write checks based on a smile and a PowerPoint. They ran forensic due diligence. And the lead partner at Vanguard was a man named Silas Vance. Silas Vance is notoriously ruthless. He is also a man who remembers everything. 3 years earlier, before I built Nexus, I had been a junior contractor on a massive database overhaul for one of Silas's subsidiary companies. I had a very specific, highly recognizable way of structuring my root directories. It was my digital fingerprint. 5 days before the annual Sterling family reunion, my phone rang. The caller ID said Vanguard Holdings. I answered. "This is Alara." "Alara," a deep, gravelly voice said. "This is Silas Vance. I'm currently looking at a pitch deck from a Julian Sterling. He's claiming he built a logistics algorithm. But unless you suddenly forgot how to code, this architecture is yours. I recognize the sequencing." I closed my eyes. The relief was so sharp it almost hurt. "It is mine, Mr. Vance. Julian is my brother. He stole the source code from my private server, and he fabricated a transfer agreement with my parents' forged signatures." There was a long, heavy silence on the line. I could hear Silas tapping a pen against his desk. "I don't do business with thieves, Alara," Silas said, his voice dropping into a register that made my spine straighten. "But I do want this algorithm. It's brilliant. If you can prove ownership, Vanguard will acquire Nexus directly from you. 10 million cash, plus a 5% royalty stake." "I have the time-stamped commits," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "I have the original server logs. I have photographs of the forged transfer agreement." "Send them. And Alara, I'm going to leave you a voicemail summarizing my findings regarding your brother's fraudulent pitch. Do whatever you want with it." Silas hung up. 2 minutes later, my phone pinged with a new voicemail. I listened to it, sitting at my kitchen counter. It was professional, it was merciless, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. That brings us back to the banquet hall. 60 members of the Sterling family were gathered for our annual reunion. The room smelled of roasted garlic and expensive perfume. Julian was wearing a tailored suit he couldn't afford, shaking hands and accepting early congratulations for his upcoming acquisition. My mother was practically glowing, gliding between tables and soaking up the praise for raising such a visionary son. I sat at table 8, near the back. I wore a simple navy dress. I ate my salad. I waited. After the main course, my father stood up and clinked his glass. That's when he delivered the toast. The one where he called my mere business a foolish attempt. The one where he praised Julian for absorbing my failure. When the polite laughter died down, my father looked at me, expecting me to lower my head. expecting me to play the part of the grateful, broken daughter they had scripted for me. I stood up. I didn't scrape my chair. I didn't rush. I walked toward the front of the room, stopping directly next to the DJ's audio board. "Dad," I said, my voice carrying cleanly across the silent room, "I think it's incredibly generous of Julian to try and save me. But before we celebrate his $10 million acquisition, I think the family deserves to hear a message from his primary investor." Julian's smug smile faltered. My mother's hand froze on her wine glass. I plugged my phone into the auxiliary cord on the soundboard. I tapped the screen. Silas Vance's deep, unmistakable voice boomed through the massive overhead speakers, filling every corner of the banquet hall. "Julian Sterling," the voicemail began. "This is Silas Vance at Vanguard Holdings. Our forensic audit is complete. We have determined that the Nexus algorithm you presented to our board was stolen from your sister, Alara Sterling. Furthermore, the transfer documents you submitted contain forged signatures, which constitutes federal wire fraud." The room stopped breathing. Aunt Linda's fork hit her plate with a sharp clatter. My cousin Mark stared at Julian with his mouth hanging open. Silas's voice kept going, cold and absolute. "Vanguard Holdings is formally withdrawing from all negotiations with your LLC. Our legal department has forwarded the evidence of your intellectual property theft to the authorities. However, we have contacted Alara directly. We will be acquiring Nexus from her, the rightful owner, for $15 million. Do not ever contact this firm again." The audio clicked off. The silence that fell over the banquet hall was so heavy it felt like water pressure. Julian's face was the color of wet cement. He took a step backward, bumping into the head table. That's a fake," he stammered, his voice cracking. "She faked that audio. She's jealous." "It's not fake, Julian," I said calmly. "Silas Vance's legal team sent the formal acquisition paperwork to my attorney this morning. The deal is already closed. I sold my company today for $15 million. My mother shot out of her chair. The pearl necklace she wore trembled against her chest. "Alara, what have you done?" she shrieked. The measured, elegant matriarch vanished in a second, replaced by a terrified woman losing control of her narrative. "You're destroying your brother. We did that transfer for the good of the family." "You forged my signature, Mom," I said. "You and Dad watched him steal my life's work, and you signed your names as witnesses to a crime. You didn't do it for the family. You did it because you think Julian is the only one who matters." My father finally found his voice. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white. "Alara, turn that off. Sit down. We can fix this quietly." "I don't want to fix it quietly, Dad," I replied. "You wanted to toast my failure in front of 60 people. I just wanted them to have the correct data." But the destruction wasn't finished. Julian suddenly gripped his own hair, his breathing turning ragged. He looked frantically from my father to my mother, his eyes wild with a panic that went far beyond public humiliation. "The deal can't be dead," Julian choked out, his voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "Dad, the deal can't be dead. You have to call them. You have to make her fix it." "Julian, calm down," my father hissed. "I can't calm down," Julian screamed, stepping away from the table. "Dad, the bridge loans, the attorneys. I didn't just borrow your savings." My father froze. "What are you talking about?" Julian was crying now, real ugly tears of absolute ruin. I needed to look like a real tech firm to get the Vanguard meeting. I had to hire fake developers, fake legal counsel, rent the downtown office. I didn't just drain your 401k, Dad. I took out a second mortgage on the house. I forged your signature on the HELOC. I owe $400,000 by the end of the month, and I used the house as collateral. The entire banquet hall gasped. My mother's knees gave out. I walked out into the cool evening air, got into my car, and drove away from the Sterling family forever. The fallout was exactly as brutal as the math predicted. Without the Vanguard buyout to cover his fraudulent loans, Julian's LLC collapsed in a matter of weeks. The bank called the second mortgage due on my parents' house. Because Julian had drained their retirement accounts to zero, they had no capital to cure the default. They were forced to sell the home they had lived in for 30 years at a massive loss, just to avoid total bankruptcy. Julian is currently under investigation for wire fraud, both by the federal government for the forged IP transfer and by the bank for the fraudulent HELOC documents. My parents are renting a small 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. My mother stopped going to her country club luncheons because she can no longer afford the dues, and because no one in our extended family will speak to them after witnessing that toast. And me? The Vanguard acquisition cleared 30 days later. I moved to Seattle. I bought a house with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. I adopted a golden retriever, and I started building a new company with a team of developers who respect me. Some people will tell you that family is everything, that you should always forgive, always protect your blood, and always keep the peace. But I learned something very important on the night of that reunion. Peace is only real if it's built on the truth. If your family requires you to be